Despite the layoffs in the tech sector, unemployment in the US is at historic lows, and we're experiencing a labor shortage in many other sectors of the economy. Contact centers have long experienced high turnover, with baseline ranges estimated to be between 30 and 45%. While 2022 was seemingly the year of employee engagement, SQM's research shows that agent engagement has remained stubbornly low for the industry, and turnover is rising. On this episode of Jump the Queue, I traverse the US from coast to coast to talk with three contact center pros about attracting, engaging, and retaining employees. We start in the Midwest with Milan Batinich II, a contact center veteran and motivational speaker who's focused on driving engagement in contact centers.
On the contact center side, I'm looking forward to all of the new technologies that are coming out. And I'm not a big technology guy, so I'm like a kid in a candy store when I learn about or hear about new technologies, because I really don't understand the inner workings of them. So I'm really looking forward to, technology. And then from like business side, I'm just looking forward to continuing to help contact centers with employee engagement and figuring out ways to keep employees happy and drive that engagement and all of that. I'd say those probably the two things I'm really looking forward to is the engagement and then just all the neat tools and technologies that are just popping up. It seems like every day I'm reading about a new one, or I'm receiving an in-mail about one that they're trying to sell to me. every morning I have a new person wanting to do a sales presentation about something.
Yeah, there is so much out there. So much out there. Let's talk about this employee engagement. I mean, I feel like that was 2022. That was kind of the hot topic. I wonder for you, did you see in 2022 the needle move? And do you think that focus is still there for 2023, or will some of this new technology coming out distract organizations from focusing on employees?
Great question. I think it'll definitely be a distraction from that, but I think for the forward-thinking organizations around that are really looking to keep up or improve employee retention, I think it'll still be top of mind for those individuals and for those organizations. But I agree with the question you asked. I definitely think, the different technologies and things may draw the attention away from what the focus was in 2022. 2022 was, we're coming out of the pandemic. How do we keep these employees happy? And I think a lot of organizations learned quickly that all those agents that you hired in 2020 and 2021 that have never stepped foot in an office, and then you tell them they have to come to an office, and then they found, oh, this isn't working.
Right.
Maybe we should just let them continue to work from home. I just saw a Gallup research from 2022 that was released, and it showed that the biggest decrease in employee engagement was companies that required remote ready employees, or where their job could be done remotely, where they were told or telling those employees they had to come back to work. And that was the biggest reduction in employee engagement and the highest increase in employee turnover, where we have the technology and we have the capabilities to let this person work from home, but we're not going to, for whatever reason. We're going to force them to come back.
The churn is at record levels, and unemployment, I just heard this morning, so we're recording this early February, so the data just came out, that unemployment is subject to revisions, but it's at the lowest level since 1969.
Wow.
So, there are companies out there hiring still, even though, right, we hear about layoffs. And some people think we're in a recession, but the data says that we're not. The data says it's hard to find people because there aren't that many people who are unemployed looking for a job. There are lots of people looking for a job.
Right, but currently employed.
Right. So I think that's where that employee engagement thing becomes so critical because everybody's trying to hire and they're trying to hire your people. And so if they're not engaged and they're not happy about where they're working, they are absolutely a risk. And then to replace them, you've got to dip back into that same low unemployment market to try and find good people. So
Right.
it's gonna be a big deal. People can't lose sight of that.
Yeah, and then organizations need to evaluate what we did in 2022 to engage employees or to attract talent, unemployed talent. How can we step up our game in order to attract talent away from, another contact center or another organization? And what are they doing that's keeping the employees engaged and keeping them there? Um, where in 2022, it may have been more of the, here's what we're doing, here's our step forward. And then everybody took that step forward, and then now they're all back at an even line. It's like, okay, so how can we elevate ourselves to be better than our competition that's looking for the same talent we're looking for?
Yeah, you know the old saying, if you ain't getting better, you're getting worse.
Right. Exactly.
Next, we go out west to hear from David Powers, author of Blue Collar Call Center and CXO of Rooter Hero Plumbing and Air in Los Angeles.
Right now, I think with everything as it is, I think my obsession right now is employee engagement, right?
Mm.
And employee experience. Because that right there drives everything else in the business, right? And I'm getting really tired of listening to calls and they get asked a question and someone's like, oh, I'm just in the call center, or I just answer calls, right? And it's cringe, right? Like I hear that, I'm like, ooh, man, no. And second, it's like, I don't know if they're saying it to deflect or if they're saying it because they actually feel that way, right?
Mm.
And honestly, that's pretty sad if they feel they're just a CSR, right? When they're the ones that, they're the first impression that a lot of customers get of a company, or at least the first impression that customers actually pay attention to, right? I'm in the trades industry, plumbing and HVAC, and we do a lot of marketing. We have vans that are wrapped up. They're like giant mobile billboards and everything else, but customers are only paying partial attention to those.
Mm-hmm.
And they get the name of the company. They're like, oh, okay, cool. And then, they call, and then the CSR, as we call them, the directors of first impressions, right? Which is cheesy, cliche, but it's true.
Yeah.
The customer like hangs on every word they say in their greeting, right? They're paying full attention. So if that agent or if that employee feels like they're just answering the phones or they're just in the office, then that's going to translate into their calls, right? They're not going to be able to assist that customer or build enough value in the company or the service for the customer to have a pleasant customer journey, right? So that's where my mind is right now. I want to get rid of that just, and instead of
Mm-hmm.
I'm just in the call center to I'm in the call center.
Yeah.
I'm a director of first impressions. Let's get this scheduled. Let's help you out, because ain't nobody calling in just chit chat when they have sewage coming up in their living room. So
Yeah, absolutely. It is. I think this is part of an industry wide challenge
mhm,
in that a lot of people, if they ask you where you work and your response is that I work in a contact center,
mhm,
that is typically not met with, oh, wow, that's a really interesting job. Tell me more about that.
right,
It
right,
is typically met with someone who thinks that that's a low skill, low wage job.
mhm,
And the reality is that contact center agents today deal with more technology than a lot of other jobs. They have to juggle potentially a lot of different systems.
Yep.
And they are absolutely a big driver of your customer experience. They are incredibly important and can either make a customer or break a customer and send them going somewhere else.
Right, right. And that's the big thing, man. And it's like, and employee experience, employee engagement, not only should you be doing it because it makes good business sense to have that engagement there, it's also the right thing to do. These people are human. And like, and I hate the fact that it's like the call center work, contact center work is viewed as entry level, right? Or unskilled labor, where they have to have so many skills. And most of it is emotional intelligence skills, right? Which going up in school and even on a lot of jobs, you know, it's that's something that's not really taught or trained, right? Until you get to a well, even most contact centers, it's like the training is like 5 weeks and 5.5 days of how to use the systems, how to use the script. And then if there's time, the last half of the last day, you'll get a little bit of customer service training, right? And then they go out to the floor and they get yelled at on their second call, and they don't know how to process it. They don't know how to handle it. They don't know how to de-escalate, things like that, because that was never taught, right? And when I was in Utah, running a team over there and training and everything, we had one person who just broke down on their second call, went to break, never came back.
Yeah, it happens.
Yep. So it was sad. And yeah, that training, it was that exactly what I described. The 5 weeks and 5 days of systems training, because there was 4 different programs that you had to run, right? Depending on the customer, you had to use all 4 at times. And it was not an easy to use system either. It was convoluted, it was outdated. And then the last half, like, oh, this is what you do when a customer says this.
Right.
So
I mean, have you gotten as far as putting together a plan for 2023 and how you want to take your employee engagement to the next level? And can you share maybe some of the things that you are planning to do?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I've been rattling this around, because right now I know most call centers are like 50-60% turnover rate, right? So maybe it's 40, but still it's really high, right? Ours, we average year after year about 12%, right? So which is pretty good. It's not, it's a bit too high for my taste, but it is what it is. And I'm not too worried about attrition when people retire, or but when they just quit or get fired, that's what disturbs me. So here's some stuff I'm not doing. All right. So because I've been in call centers that did this kind of thing, and it's insulting. It's kind of cheesy. You know when let's say someone does a cross sell or an upsell, right? They announce it, and then that person goes to spin a wheel, right? And when they spin that wheel, like they're in kindergarten, right? They can win a candy bar, or they can win a $5 Starbucks card, and stuff like that, right? Here's the thing. Or other games, like I remember one time we played this game. Whenever you got a sale or a really good call, you go and play basically beer pong, where you had to throw like no beer involved, but like these plastic
that would have made it better, probably.
Honestly, it would have made the calls better too. So you had to throw a little tiny ball into a cup that had was half filled with like beans, and then you'd win something that was like, it was like $1, or like you could win anywhere between $1 and $20 of fake money that you could then save up through the quarter, and they'd have an auction for like these dollar store things, right?
That sounds great.
Yeah, nobody liked it. So the thing is, they never polled the employees to see what they wanted, right? And I think most of the employees would be like, either give me money, right? Because right now it's like minimum wage, and or two, maybe some time off the floor,
Yeah.
right? So that's something I'm not doing because I hated it myself. And I've also polled people, and like 90% were like, no, no, we're adults. Sorry. So right now I'm focused more on one-on-ones, right? Just getting people off the floor, just to chat. I have my supervisors, I have my team leads there to cover stats and coachings and everything else. When we do a one-on-one, it's more focused on their goals, either
Mhm.
professionally or personally. And I help them out any way I can to accomplish those goals. I've been doing that for a few months now, and just the morale has skyrocketed, right? Because they're actually accomplishing things. We had someone that just bought a house,
Nice,
right?
nice.
And on a CSR salary, that's we're not the lowest paid, right? CSRs, but we're also not the highest paid.
Yeah,
So
and I mean, you're in California too,
yeah,
so
exactly.
it's not exactly a
Exactly.
low cost state when it comes to
No,
housing.
no, it's ridiculous. But when people have those successes, right? They and because of someone at their job took the time to talk to them, right? Or give them or point them towards resources
Hmm.
that they didn't have before. It just makes a world of difference, right? And then I constantly go out on the floor, but we're hybrid, so I'm constantly on our Discord server as well. Sometimes it's just like shooting the crap, right?
Yeah.
I want to. This is a family show, so I want to keep it, PG-13 here. So just go up like 9 o'clock at night, post some memes, stuff like that. Engage with the people there, see how's everybody is doing. Because I leave the office like at 5, right? And then I go home, I log in, and just hang out digitally
Yeah.
with my team and my kids at the same time. So
I'm
just like,
glad you think this is a family show. Is that because you listen with your kids? I mean, what's
well, you release them on Friday, right? Now,
yeah.
most Fridays, it's my youngest son's late start day. So, and his school is on the way to the office. So when we get in, we usually put it on and he gets at least like 10-15 minutes of it
Okay,
before we
well, that's
go.
good to know. I didn't know that I had such a youthful audience
Well,
participation, and now I know. So I'm gonna make sure and tuck that into the back
yeah,
of the head.
yeah. See, so, stop the cursing, Rob. So,
It's not me. It's usually not me. Sometimes
I
the
know,
guests have some language, and I am okay with that
I know.
because I want people to be real.
Yeah,
But
no, and
to all my future guests, hey, David's kid is listening. Just be aware.
oh no, usually I use the F word like a comma. So I'm from the East Coast and I'm from a Navy family, so it's like
Yeah,
I
it's in the genes.
yeah. So and I've heard it come from the 12-year-old. I've heard it come from my 5-year-old. So you know, swear away, swear
Yeah,
away.
you're raising them
Yeah.
right. David, thank you so much for joining today. I know that you're doing good stuff with employee engagement and good stuff outside of that. For those that don't know, and I don't know how you don't know by now, but David has the Caffeinated CX podcast. Absolutely go check that out if you don't have a chance. It's great short form content, actionable content, things that you can use. So give it a listen. And as always, David, thanks for hanging out with me. Finally, we head to Jacksonville, Florida for an East Coast perspective from Bunyamin Cankirli, Service Delivery Director for Concentrix, a global BPO.
Just today, something happened at work that really made me realize again the importance of mental well-being with employees. How sometimes we're so focused at work and pushing numbers and client satisfaction, which all are important things, by the way. But but equally, if not more important, employee mental well-being, to pay attention to that, to look for those clues and understand how to maneuver those conversations and how to help someone if they're going through a very tough time is I'm learning it's equally at the minimum, but if not more important than all those other things I've mentioned. So that's because something happened just today, right before this call, actually. That's really on my mind to make sure that mental well-being isn't something that's like a once a month thing or once a year thing because it's celebrated around the world, but that is actually part of the culture and part of the business, right? Which is, but us as leaders, we have to drive that, right? Because you can have it within your company culture, but the leaders have to drive that home and really look for those things. So that's what's on my mind right now.
Yeah. I did an entire episode on this, and it strikes me that one of the things, this is really true of contact centers, but it's also true of all kinds of other businesses. There's not a metric for that, at least not one that I'm aware of that goes up on a board that we're paying attention to when we think about what we're trying to achieve
Yeah.
this week, this month, this year. And because of that, it's one of those things that we can lose focus of it. So I'm glad that you're thinking about it. Can you tell me, like, what are some of the things that you're doing or you're thinking about doing to keep the focus on that? Or maybe, like, what are some challenges that you have with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a couple of things that's really important is make sure you understand and are aware of the resources that are available. Because for example, at the organization that I'm part of, we have a ton of resources, but if you don't know of them, you're not aware of them, you don't know where to find them. It's almost like it doesn't exist, right, to you.
Yeah.
So really understanding that how to get the resources and where to find them is really important. So familiarize yourself with the processes and the resources in place to tackle some of this. I think it's key. The other thing I believe is really important is make sure that your team, because someone like in my role, I may not always every day interact with the entry level employees, for example, who make up a big pool of our organization, right?
Mhm.
But that's where my team has to be really strong and really have those day-to-day interactions and check in on people, because someone can be good 3 weeks ago. It doesn't mean that they're good today. Things change, things develop, and so does people's mental well-being with that. So just and it sounds maybe very basic, right? But really being very close to the team, interacting with them frequently, especially in the remote world, that's even more exemplified because when we are all brick and mortar, we're all together. You can sometimes from people's body language or even sometimes how they dress figure out something is off, something is different. But when it's
Mhm.
remote, you don't have that luxury anymore. So you have to even you need strong leaders who are looking for those clues, who are really paying attention and understanding if something is off by in some cases just listening to the tone of the person, right? Like I have a lot of employees where I know how they sound, meaning if they sound any different one day, I will notice because I know their normal tone, their normal behavior. So, but that's my point. If you don't pay attention to that, you may not
Mhm.
notice. And that's what I was saying earlier is really paying attention to those little things, especially in a remote environment is really going to be important. And I agree with what you said. There may not be a specific well-being metric, but there are, I call them clue metrics, right? For example, someone being absent when they weren't before. It doesn't mean immediately it's well-being, right? It could be a bunch of other
Yeah.
reasons too, but it's a potential, it's a clue. So if we have employee surveys, that's another clue metric. You can look at that as well, because especially a lot of
Mhm.
those surveys they tend to be anonymous. People will say, hey, look, I'm feeling like crap. And this is just my situation. And people, they'll be very transparent, which is what we want. And so that's another clue metric. We can look at that as well, at those scores and those comments there as well. So there are clues like that. But I think there's nothing more powerful than actually interacting, right? Like, for example, daily huddles, daily conversations, team meetings, one-on-ones, skip levels, focus groups, all of those things. They are very important things because they also are those clue metrics, clue conversations that give you an idea of, you know, is there something I need to pay more attention to? And I think that's, you know, that's really, really important. The challenge that I sometimes experience is that, you know, when you're part of a large organization, you set up a lot of different lines of businesses, and with that comes new people who are new in the leadership role, and they're learning themselves, right? So,
Yeah.
and it's almost unfair to expect for them to be experts on day one and recognize all these things. So sometimes the challenge can be that when you have those types of environments and setups, that it can take a little bit longer to notice, because they're learning, right? Because when you were an agent, and we've talked about this before on our first interaction with you, it's about you. But when you're a leader now, it's about others, and that's the main difference. And when people are new in the leadership role, they're learning that. Like
Yeah.
and for some people it goes natural and it's faster. For some, it could take months, it could take years to get to the point where they understand the concept of leadership, right? And so, those are some of the challenges I can see that can bring sometimes. But yeah, really, really important. And like I said, I prepared something completely different. So this is kind of as I'm thinking about what just happened, really uh, just reminds me of the importance of mental well-being, and it impacts everything, right? If someone isn't feeling good mentally, especially mentally, there's no way to turn this. It will impact their work. But
Yeah.
it's just going to. It's just going to.
Absolutely.
Some people hide it a little better than others, maybe, but ultimately it's going to impact. And I've come to the conclusion, our motivation as leaders shouldn't even be that. It shouldn't be, oh my goodness, it's going to impact their work, so let me help them. No, it should be, it's going to impact the person. It's going to impact
Yeah.
them. Let's
Yeah.
help them. And that's more coming from a genuine place. And when that's the case, I think the help is more genuine, and the people feel that, they're more open to receive the help. If they feel that you're just helping them because you're trying to get your numbers, or whatever your other alternative motive is, you may find that people may not be as open as they would be, and that will then also help make it more difficult to help them. And so, yeah, just those are some of the things I would
Yeah.
love to
You
share.
know
Yeah.
what? Two things kind of popped into my head as you're talking about these. Number one, and I think it was Martin Teasdale who does Get Out of Rap. For those of you that aren't familiar, it's a great podcast. He's over in the UK. I think it was him, but don't quote me on it. But when he was a team leader, he had like a board, or I think he was an ops manager, and he had a board for his team leaders, maybe, but they could like put like how I'm feeling today. It was almost like a mood board that they could update every day, so that there was an opportunity to just say, hey, like I don't even have to tell you, but I am letting you know, like I'm having a tough day, right? I'm maybe not in the best mood, or something has happened. And I
Mm,
think, you can adapt that to the digital world. You can also just check in with people like, hey, just send me an emoji about how you're feeling today. And when you reach out to your team and let them know that that's okay, right? Be honest with me. Just what's your emoji for today? And or at least right
yeah.
now, that can help me gauge where you are and how potentially I can support you. The other thing that jumped out to me, and I know that um, you recently posted about the earthquake that happened
Yeah.
over in Turkey and Syria, whether it's world events that impact people that you know, or
Yeah.
whether it's personal events that impact your family. Like there are all kinds of things that are going to be hidden away kind of from work that affect you and affect how you are feeling. And those types of things can happen at any time. So when you said, somebody 3 weeks ago, they're great. Yeah, absolutely. 3 weeks ago, this hadn't happened. And so being able to approach someone with
Yeah.
that level of trust and engage and be able to support them as a person is a huge thing for leaders. And it's not easy, but man, it makes a world of difference.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I know we said 3 weeks, but honestly, it could be overnight. It doesn't even have
Yeah.
to be like weeks. It could be like you said, right? Everything is great. Earthquake hits, and that's an overnight thing. And the entire your world changes. Like for me, like I didn't have family that was impacted, right? Because they live in different parts of the country. But it almost felt like my family was impacted. I remember like the
Mhm.
first couple of weeks, uh, like it was constantly in my head. Like I'm working, but I'm thinking in the back of my head, it's always there. What's happening to those people? Because obviously I'm always reading about it. I'm listening to YouTube news channels who are recording a lot of the events and the conversations and the graphics, which were really maybe not the best idea to really look at them, but you want to stay informed, so you do, and
Yeah.
so yeah, it has a huge impact, right, on how you and so so now think about someone's immediate family that was impacted. So think about if it's impacting my mental well-being, and then it's constantly in my head spinning around those images and those conversations and those audio messages of people under the rubbles. If that's doing that to me when I didn't have any immediate impact, just imagine someone who lost a sibling, who lost a parent, who lost a
Yeah.
child. Just think about that. And so it's definitely yeah, something, that event in particular has, just reminds you of to be more appreciative of things, because overnight things can change and you may not have your family, your house, your car, whatever is important to you, right? Your
Yeah.
pets or whatever. So yeah, that's been pretty tough. And so the mental well-being, I mean, that's the reason why I picked. Let me talk a little bit and raise some awareness around that, because I do think everyone is aware, but people may not always be aware of what can we do. So we know this now, we know how this can impact people, but what is there something that we can really do for employees, for people who have mental well-being challenges, and also not look at it as a weakness. I think that's part of the reason why I still think it's not talked about too much is people are afraid, especially in a work environment, right? If I tell my manager I have mental, it may impact my career because they may think, oh, you can't handle tough situations, or
Yeah.
they may immediately think it's work related. And so people, I think, are still kind of afraid of coming forward, especially in work environments, partially understandably. Partially I understand why, but that's something we really need to change. And organizations and senior leaders within organization can play a big role in changing that, and making sure that people can and should be comfortable raising those things to say, hey, today is just not my day, right? And it's fine, right? I mean, think about the sports team, right? You have sports teams who win championships, but they didn't win every game. They had
Right.
some bad games. They had bad playoff series. I mean, it happens, but at the end, they still end up winning a championship. So meaning it's normal. Sometimes you're going to have an off day, an off week in some cases,
Hmm.
and the more we can get better at coping with it versus thinking that's not normal, the easier the process gets for people who are impacted by it, and organizations and leaders like myself. We have to think about it from a human standpoint, and also understand, yes, we have a business to run, but like I said, think about teams who win championships. They didn't win every game, win every series. No, you have teams who, I mean, most teams, they have off days, and they have all their superstars on the court. So it's not that that's the issue, but it's an off day. It's just it didn't. Yeah. So
Yeah.
so
Well,
that's
and
kind of how
even
I see it.
those individual players might have an off day, even in a win, right? So I mean,
Yeah.
the team might have an okay day, but
True.
you could have an
Yeah.
individual who's just off.
Yeah.
And so I love that you brought that up. I think it is critical. I think it is something that uh, is not talked about enough in enough organizations. And the more that people like you are thinking about it and talking about it, the more that we can all be brave to talk about that and think about the ways that we can foster a better environment for all of our employees so that they can feel comfortable to reach out when they need help.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Next in Queue is brought to you by Happy To and is produced by me, Rob Dwyer. If you enjoy this podcast, Please, by all means, subscribe and or rate this podcast in iTunes or your favorite podcast app. But more importantly, please tell just one person about this podcast. Word of mouth is the best way for people to discover new content. As always, thanks for listening.